Good morning. My name is Ann Draper, and I'm with the Southern San Mateo County League. When I got interested in sea level rise, which was over 5 years ago, the questions were, at that time, are we going to be impacted by sea level rise? And if so, how much, how big, how deep? And about 5 years ago or so, it started changing to how are we going to adapt to sea level rise? And so today, this panel is talking about adaptation to sea level rise will affect us all directly or indirectly in the Bay Area. To adapt to sea level rise, it takes action and cooperation on the state, regional, and local level. And so I'm really excited to have the three panelists at those three levels. And we're going to start off by Assemblyman Rich Gordon, who's the the chair of the Select Committee on Sea Level Rise, as well as being our local Assemblyman. So thank you very much for being here today.
Great, thank you very much. A pleasure to be here. I'm pleased that the League is looking at this issue. Let me start by saying simply, there is absolutely no question, the seas are rising. In 1900, we put a gauge at the Golden Gate Bridge. 1900 through the next century, to 2000, that gauge showed a 7-inch sea level rise. We are continuing to see a rise at that gauge. All of this comes really within a context that for about 5,000 years, the seas did not rise. And so within that context, it's awfully hard for a lot of folks to get their head around the fact that the seas are rising. But even if you're going to deny climate change, you cannot deny the facts that are present at that gauge at the Golden Gate Bridge. In California, we have 840 miles of coastline. That ranks us third amongst all the states for the most coastline. We're only behind Florida and Alaska. 3/4 of California's 38 million people live near the coastline or along the San Francisco Bay. The California State Assembly 2 years ago organized a select committee on sea level rise, and I had the honor of chairing that committee. And over a period of a year and a half, we held several hearings around the state to look at some of the key issues that will be impacted by the sea level rise. We found, one, that there is extensive infrastructure in California built right at sea level. 3,500 miles of roadway are at immediate sea level. 280 miles of railroad line are at immediate sea level. We have airports in San Francisco, Oakland, and San Diego that are at sea level. Almost all of our wastewater treatment facilities in California rely on a gravity flow out of the hills and the highlands down to a coastal zone area where the water is treated and put back into the ocean or the San Francisco Bay. All of those wastewater treatment plants are infrastructure at risk. We have schools in that zone, and there are many other critical elements of infrastructure. Our ports that help us be the economic engine of the country will be impacted because of their location. And the infrastructure that moves the goods from the ports inland is also at sea level in its first phase. Finally, an area that we discovered through our hearings that had not really been immediately apparent to us is the fact that in California we also have a fairly vibrant coastal agricultural zone. And that area will be impacted because as the seas rise, there will be additional saltwater intrusion into the aquifers along the coastal zone, and that will have a disastrous impact on the wells that pump in that zone now to produce artichokes, Brussels sprouts, and flowers in California. So we clearly discovered through our work of the Select Committee, and there's no question that California's economy is threatened by sea level rise. We also realized that, and kind of some of our takeaways were that this is a topic that it's hard to grab public attention around. Because as we described in our report, this is a slow-moving emergency. And until we have better graphics and better understanding, it will be hard to grab the attention of the public. But we must educate the public because we will have no choice in California but to move towards adaptation. We will have to figure out where we are going to armor and protect coastal assets, and we are going to have to figure out, as part of our adaptation, where will we retreat or abandon coastal assets, and how will we make those changes? Last year, I carried legislation that the governor signed, which will require for the very first time that all local agencies and planning entities who are doing any work on sea level rise planning provide those plans to a central database that will be collected at the state. It will allow us to begin to understand who is preparing, what are they preparing to do, and will also, I think more importantly, understand what areas of the state are not planning or thinking about this issue. Where do we need to focus some attention to get planning done? We also last year had an interesting development, one of those serendipitous things that occurs once in a blue moon in the California legislature, and that is we actually got some funding for sea level rise. Now how that occurred is an interesting dynamic. I sit on the budget subcommittee for natural resources in the state assembly. And I went to our budget chair and I said, I want a line item for sea level rise planning put in the state budget. And the chair said, well, there's no money. I said, I didn't say I wanted any money. I just want a line item. He said, you want a line item that says zero? I said, yes. I said, I want a placeholder for the future. You know, if we're in tight times now and there is no money, I want a placeholder in the state budget saying that this is something we're preparing for and we're going to do at some point. So in the state assembly, we adopted a budget with a line item for sea level rise planning, $0. In the state Senate, there was no similar line item at all. And so it ended up in conference committee, where the two had to be reconciled. And Mark Leno, chair of the Senate Budget Committee, said, you know, I hate to admit it, but the Assembly actually has a good idea. There ought to be a line item for sea level rise. But he also said, the Assembly got it wrong. There needs to be some money here. And he said, you know, the governor wants $5 million for another study around climate change. He said, I don't think we need to spend another $5 million on studies. Let's put that into the sea level rise account. Well, the governor got a little apoplectic, I'm told, negotiated with Senator Leno and the Budget Committee. We ended up with $2.5 million of brand new money in a sea level rise planning account. And local communities are now eligible to apply through the Coastal Conservancy, the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, and the Coastal Commission, Conservancy Commission, and BCDC. And we're hoping that this will be a start of an ongoing planning process so that California can better prepare for what is this slow-moving emergency.